Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live with our host, Ned Denison. Ned?
Hello, everyone. I'm the chairperson of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. We have one of our honorees with us today, Rosemary George. She is history in herself. She has been around the marathon scene for a long, long time and part of some of the greatest swims in the history of the sport. So, Rosemary, let's start with how you got into marathon swimming. When I look back through the records, it looks to me like the Channel was maybe your first big swim, or perhaps you had others with the BLDSA. Tell us how you got started, please.
Because I was brought up in Dover. So the swimmers used to come there and train, and I was fascinated, and I used to swim up and down with them. And then in 1955, I went on Abu Heath's boat and helped him on his swim from France to England. And he would just keep looking up at the boat. He was swimming, nobody was doing anything for him, they were all asleep. And he kept looking up at me and saying, shy, shy. So I thought he meant I was shy. Maybe in those days I was. So and in the end, I realized shy is tea in Arabic. So nobody was giving him anything. So somebody told me it means tea. So I just made him tea and fed him. And I just watched him every second of the way. And from then on, you know, that's what I want you to do.
There are stories about this man eating like 4 chickens at a setting. Did you have to cook him a couple of chickens on the boat?
No. Who ate 4 chickens in? I don't know.
Abu Weef, he's got this stories about him of eating an incredible amount of chicken.
No. Maybe that was Jason Zerganos, the Greek man.
And was your Channel swim your first big swim?
No, I did some others before that. I did like South Sea to Ride, the Isle of Wight, you know that, and Donegal Bay, you know that.
Up in Ireland?
Yes, yeah, yeah. And Firth of Forth, from Kirkcaldy to Portobello, where that big bridge is there. And I attempted the Channel 1960, and I got within 400 yards, and we lost sight of the pilot boat, and we had to row about 9 miles into Calais Harbour because there were no mobile phones or any connection to the boats in those days. So that was it. I couldn't get in. They could touch the bottom with an oar, maybe on a sandbank, I don't know. They touched the bottom and they said, come on, you're there. And I couldn't feel the bottom. We were drifting down towards Boulogne. They got frightened and they pulled me out. And thank goodness in the dinghy, they took my toweling dressing gown. So I put that on and watched them row back. God, yeah. But I still wasn't put off. I tried again. And in 61, I did it.
Who were your biggest influences in this sport as you were up and coming?
Well, I think that the Egyptians and Abu Heath, because they used to come and train in Dover, and I tried to keep up with them and swim with them, and they were so nice. And then I liked Nabil Shazli, and he used to stay at my house in Dover, and my mum used to do all the shopping for him because he had his swimmers with him, and same with Michael Reed. You know, yeah, of course you know Michael, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And did you have a coach yourself in these years?
No, I didn't. I just copied what they did. Yeah. Mm.
And when I look at some of your career, you spent a fair bit of time traveling, mostly around Europe, doing the international swims. Were you representing Great Britain? Were you a professional? What was it? Were you an individual?
Just an individual, yeah. And then when we swam, we got some cash. I don't remember how much it was. Probably nothing, minimal. Mm.
And looking at those years, what were some of your favorite memories?
Well, just meeting all those people, going to those countries, and, you know, Capri, Naples was incredible. And then going to the Suez Canal and swimming there. I had a man on the boat there as my observer on that swim. And he was Egyptian, and he had a good job with the Suez Canal, because that's just shortly after they took the canal back from us, wasn't it? It was our canal and they took it. And Monson was laughing now. And a very nice man as my observer, and he kept saying, come on, bloody English, come on, bloody English. And then after that, I had the backs of my legs were absolutely blistered from that hot sun. You can imagine, Suez Canal. So he took me to his house instead of going back to the hotel in Port Said from Ismailia. And we became very good friends, and he's got a lovely family. And yeah, so it's amazing, Ned, the people that you probably know as well, the people that you meet on that, it is incredible. Mm.
And are you still seeing these people from time to time as they come through London?
No, because I think most of them are not around anymore.
Okay.
But I still, Nabil was in London about 2 years ago because his son was in charge of the Egypt Air, and I saw Nabil then, and Nabil stayed here from time to time. And I haven't seen him then since 2 or 3 years, but we still talk. He's a brilliant man. Mm.
And what were some of your more difficult memories? Obviously, the getting pulled 400 meters from the shore was one of them. Other difficult travel experiences or swimming experiences?
No, I can't. No, I don't think so. That Firth of Forth, that Kirkcaldy to Portobello, I did it on June the 9th, my birthday. And it was so cold then, Ned, you can imagine, huh? And I kept asking for a hot drink. They didn't have any hot drinks. And I said, if I don't get a hot drink, I'm out. Somehow they got a hot drink. And that was it. And I went ashore at Portobello. And that was horrible. You know, you can imagine the sort of boat that we went on. It wasn't like nowadays where you have a nice cabin and a bunk and a duvet, nothing. Lie down on the deck. Mm.
The metal fishing boats.
Yeah, that's probably what it was, yeah. And that Capri Naples, you know, when you do it, you'll know it's just, because I breathe on the right, so every breath I was looking at Mount Vesuvius. It was so beautiful, and the Suez Canal was amazing, yeah. Because you see, I think, when you're doing the swims like that, you see the country like nobody else does because you've got loads of time to look at it, you know, that the desert there, and yeah, it was beautiful.
And Yugoslavia.
Mm-hmm.
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia, yeah.
And they were missing.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
You're credited with being the coach of honoree John Ericson, who
Yeah.
on his two-way channel broke his dad's time, and was the first ever three-way. How did you know John? How did you become his coach?
Well, I went when Ted took him when he was 13. I was observer because I used to do observing for the Channel Swimming Association, and I was observer on the boat. And I mean, you know Ted, I think, and you know, come on, you know what he's like. And we had to take him out of the water, and he went down in the cabin below, and nobody went to him, and I went to him and helped him. And he said he was crying, sobbing, and said, I've let my dad down, I've let my dad down. So after that, I spoke to Ted, and I said, why don't you send him to me next year? And I suppose Ted considered it and sent him to me, and I took him on that swim, looked after him quite well. I met him in London, and I took him to Dover, where I'd lived. I was still living in London. Took him to Dover on my Vespa.
From London?
Yeah, so that wasn't looking after him very well, was it? But
how long did that take back in the day?
Probably 3.5 or 4 hours, but because there was no motorway in those days. But I think John was just thrilled, you know, and he died, and he got a bike after that. He just loved that bike. And I got him across. So lovely, and it was the beginning of an amazing friendship. And then I took him on his two-way, and on the two-way, we went with Captain Hutchinson. Have you heard of him?
He's an honoree. I know him. I know his record anyways. I never met the man.
Yeah. So we were going in to St. Margaret's there, and suddenly there was a tanker bearing down. Now, if that tanker wants to go away from you, it'd take him 7 miles apparently to stop and to divert. So we had to go around the tanker. Said, oh, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. But he did it by 3 minutes.
And what was his reaction when he found out he beat his dad's time on the two-way?
Well, I think he was a bit tired to show any reaction on the boat after. But after that, I think he was, oh, my dad's going to be so upset. Because you know what, Ted is jealous, huh? But anyway, if Ted got his picture in the paper, he was pleased. So then he came to me for the three-way. And Ted arrived with him. So we were coming into the third way, you know, and I said, come on, John, you can make it. And he looked at me and he said, I'm not giving up now, Rose. And he carried on. And then Ted had the amazing argument with the pilot, which was Bob Reed. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
You're good, you're good. So Ted had a terrific argument with him. You do this, all this swimming, you do it wrong, you take them in the wrong direction, was screaming at him. So Bob Reed closed the wheelhouse door. So we were all locked out. So then I tapped on the door a bit lightly and said, can I come in, Bob? He said, of course you can, Rose, you can come in. And that was it. So then John did it, and then it went back to my house, and then the journalists arrived in the morning, and the first one, you know, there Ted was thrilled and made him a pancake. So after that, the next one that came, Ted swore at him, and you get out of here because he's tired. And so, oh my God. So he's a little bit touchy sometimes, isn't he? Do you know that?
I don't know that part of his personality.
God. Okay, yeah,
But for the viewers, just a couple of points while we're on it. First of all, yelling at channel pilots is usually a pretty bad idea. It can shorten your swim tremendously, like they turn around. The second thing is that my standard advice to people is appoint one person to be in charge. That one person is the only person who speaks to the pilot.
yes.
That person is the only person who gives the swimmers instruction. And everybody else is there to help and make tea and boil water. And when the swimmer drops the feed and you're not the running the swim, you're allowed to yell, go, and clap your hands.
Yeah,
But otherwise, one person speaks to the swimmer.
Yeah. But he always wants to take over. But the pilot said after that, Bob Reed said, you know, if it wasn't for you, that was me and John, he would have pulled him out after the abuse. Yeah. But anyway, he did it, and everybody was happy. And I thought when he finished it and the journalists came, I said to them, I don't think this will ever be done in our generation. I really didn't think that, but there you go. Never predict.
And then we had a few others, Allison certainly amongst them, and young Chloe McCardle.
Yeah.
And what was your reaction when Sarah Thomas went for the 4?
Oh, God. I don't know. I said, I don't think it could happen, but it did. Amazing, huh? You've met her, obviously.
Yeah, I know her pretty well, and particularly coming back from breast cancer. It's just an amazingly inspirational story. She had done the Cook Strait a few months before that, or a number of months before that, and really struggled in the Cook Strait. So it was a huge attempt for her.
Mm-hmm. It won't be done again. No, I don't think so.
And did you coach others after John?
Yeah,
Father
I did
Manning.
Father Manning, the priest, and Bob Lyle, and Michael Reed. I helped him, and he was going on his swim from Calais, his first one, and I was observer, and that was the year that John had done his baby swim. So I was observer there. Michael didn't know anything. He'd just come from the Olympics, which he had to tell us all. And then he said, you're smiling like you know. He said, I don't know what time John was, but if John does it in this time, I can do it in less. And he didn't. So that was his first swim. And then I went on a double with him. and he got very ill on there, and we had to pull him out and took him back to my house. Everything goes on at my house. And he opened his eyes. I put him to bed and everything. He was kind of delirious. And did I do it? And I said, no. And then he screamed in the middle of the night that he didn't do it. Because he couldn't, because he was just going around. He said, I'm winning. He thought he was in Windermere. But then I went with him on a couple of other swims. And we're just very good friends.
And did you ever imagine he'd become the king of the channel with 33 crossings?
Yeah, probably. He's that way inclined, isn't he?
Determination. What?
Oh yeah, and want. I don't think it's only determination. It's a want, isn't it? He wanted it. He wanted to be whatever, the best. But he's a good man. He's an excellent person. So I usually don't go to the dinner anymore because I hate that driving down to Dover. It's such a horrible drive. But next year will be my 60th.
So the Channel Swimming Association calls the swimmers up after 50 years and makes a special presentation.
Yeah,
you're gonna go down for it then.
Maybe they'll give me something special. I doubt it, but they might.
Will you leave the day before on your Vespa?
No, but I'm still not on a Vespa. I'm on a Honda 90. Still, so if you come to London, I can take you downtown on it.
I'm quite a tall man, Rosemary. I think we would look quite the sight with me on the back of your Honda 90.
Well, I'm 5'5", so yeah.
And besides going down for the dinner next year, what has your open water swimming been like the last couple of decades? What have you been up to?
Just dipping in, doing a bit, doing half a mile or something. No, not much now. No.
And one of your stomping grounds is the famous Serpentine in London, probably the location of one of the most productive channel training places in the world. How much influence have you had on this new group of puppies?
No, not much really, because they're not from the CSA. They're from the other one, aren't they?
When I talk to people like John Tierney and Danny Lobo and Nick Adams, they hold you in high regard and put you on a pedestal.
I never heard that before. Only say, yeah.
You're definitely in there for a free cup of tea and a scone next time you see one of those characters.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you. Because Danny is a gorgeous man, isn't he?
He is indeed. He's
really nice. Yeah. Yeah, and I've become quite close, friendly now with John. Yeah. Yeah.
When you look back over these last years, what's your biggest surprise in the sport? The biggest change that you just never saw coming?
Just how it's got so big. How many competitions? How many different locations? It's unbelievable. Don't you think so?
I think we've had an explosion in the sport, certainly in the last 20 years. And I think on the positive side, it's been incredible for people. I think for me, particularly women who get to the point where their kids are maybe 13, 14, 15, and they say, okay, now it's my turn to do something special. And there's a certain satisfaction that they get out of it, which is just incredible. And I think the other thing for me is that the ability to travel around the world now, reasonably easy, reasonably cheaply, and the swims are all set up for you. You want to go to Hong Kong, there's a swim. You want to go to Melbourne, there's a swim. Yes.
And meet people. I was going to say that because when I did it, it wasn't easy to travel. I would take a train or something like that, and then a funny Egypt airplane that was nearly falling down. And, and you went to Yugoslavia, that doesn't exist anymore, does it? It's called something else now. And yeah, but it's brilliant.
I'll give you an example. I met Danny when he came to Cork. I later met him at a Dover dinner. He then called me up one day and he said, look, there's a swim in Ibiza. Why don't we go? A 30K swim. So we went there, and he called me up last year and said, there's a swim in some place called Vigo. And I said, you know, what country is it? So off we went to Spain to do another swim. And as you say, you meet people and you keep in touch, and you get together over the years.
It makes your life, really, doesn't it?
It does.
Because all the people that I've met, it's incredible. Yeah.
And what changes are you predicting for the next 20 years in this sport?
Oh, I don't think I'll be here.
Don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I want to hear something upbeat, something dramatic.
No, I don't know, Ned, what will happen, because can it get any bigger? Probably it can. More places to swim. Yeah, because they don't do that swim in Yugoslavia anymore, that Lake Ohrid, do they?
They do it as part of the professional circuit.
Okay, okay.
Steve, you might kick in on Ohrid. You would know it better than I. And I know it is possible to arrange an epic solo swim, but it's part of the FINA World Pub Grand Prix
swim series.
Ultra Marathon.
Yeah.
And now it's in Northern Macedonia.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So you don't swim professionally?
No. No. I think I described it once that those guys swim so fast over 25 kilometers that I might be able to sprint with them for 400 meters, maybe. They're just so fast.
I know.
You can't imagine.
It's incredible how they do it. Because it used to be just a sprint swim, didn't it? But now they go on and on in these long distance. Incredible.
Well, I think and Steve, you pitch in on this. You know more than I do. But first of all, you know, most of these swimmers, that's their job, and they have that job for 20 years. You know, some of the professional swimmers are well into their 30s. They do their 2-3 hours in the morning. They do 2-3 hours in the evening. They have sponsors. They raise families on it, and I think in my case, or in your days, there were very few professional swimmers, and they certainly weren't working out twice a day, 5-6 hours a day. Steve, comments on that? I mean, you're kind of in the middle of that whole era. You were doing crazy training without the money.
Yes. So they are very specific advantages. Society allows money and travel. Many of these swimmers are actually paid. So, well, in our day, we had to pay for that airfare and hotel and rent a car and food and everything. Much of that is covered, for the best ones at least. And so the opportunities for swimmers to continue in their 20s and 30s and then go from there to being professional coaches and administrators and event organizers, it's an entire lifestyle. Whereas in the previous century, with some exceptions, it was just part of your lifestyle. So it's transitioned from being part of your lifestyle and part of your identity to being your identity and your lifestyle. So in many ways, that is a great incentive for more and more people to flow into the sport.
Yeah.
Well, Rosemary, we've come to about the end of our interview time. We want to thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Keep those youngsters in the Serpentine focused now. Don't let them off the hook. Make sure they buy you a cup of tea now, because they've been saying good things about you.
The tea is free, so I bring all the tea bags and it's free. So
I get them to bring you a scone with some strawberry jam and curdled cream. Then I'll have a word with Mr. Tierney.
Okay, listen, Ned, nice to talk to you, and good luck when you do Capri, Naples. I'll be thinking of you and hope to hear from you after that.
If there's a bit of a tsunami with giant wave that comes behind me, I might just get in under the 10 hours. It's going to be a struggle, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Rosemary.
Okay, thank you, Ned.